Jake Morrison sat in the mess hall of the starship Starbound, eating his morning meal. The coffee was bitter, but it helped him wake up. He had been a lieutenant in the Earth Space Navy for 8 years now. Most of his time was spent on boring patrol missions around the outer planets. The ship's speaker crackled to life. "Lieutenant Morrison, report to the captain's office immediately." Jake sighed and put down his coffee cup. He walked through the metal hallways of the ship. Other crew members nodded at him as he passed. Jake wondered what Captain Lisa Park wanted. He hoped he was not in trouble. The captain's office was small but neat. Captain Park sat behind her desk, looking serious. She was a tough woman who had earned respect from every person on the ship. Her brown hair was pulled back tight and her uniform was perfect as always. "Sit down, Jake," she said, pointing to a chair. Jake sat down and waited. The captain looked at a tablet in her hands. She seemed to be reading something important. "We got a message this morning," Captain Park said. "It came from the Zephyrian Alliance. They want to talk to someone specific from Earth." Jake knew about the Zephyrians. They were aliens who had made contact with humans 15 years ago. Since then, there had been peace between their people and Earth. The Zephyrians were smart and had better technology than humans. They looked like tall, thin people, but with blue skin and long arms. "What do they want?" Jake asked. Captain Park turned the tablet toward him. On the screen was a message written in both English and Zephyrian symbols. Jake could read some of the alien writing, but not much. "They are asking for you by name," Captain Park said. "A Zephyrian female named Kiravel wants to meet with you. She says you two have met before." Jake felt confused. He tried to think of any time he had met a Zephyrian. He had been on a few missions to their space stations, but those were just quick supply runs. He had never talked to any aliens for more than a few minutes. "I don't remember meeting any Zephyrian named Kiravel," Jake said. "Are you sure they have the right person?" Captain Park nodded. "They sent your full name, rank, and service number. They also sent a photo of you from when you were younger." She showed him another screen. Jake saw a picture of himself from about 10 years ago. He looked much younger and had shorter hair, but he still could not remember when the photo was taken. "Where did they get this picture?" Jake asked. "That's what I want to know," Captain Park said. She stood up and walked to a safe in the corner of her office. She put her hand on a scanner, and the safe opened. Inside were several files marked with red labels that said "Top Secret." Captain Park pulled out a thick file and put it on her desk. Jake could see his name written on the front. "Jake, I need to tell you something about your past," she said. "About 12 years ago, you were part of a special mission. Something happened during that mission that was so bad, the doctors had to change your memory." Jake felt cold all over. "What do you mean, change my memory?" "You and 3 other crew members had your memories of that mission erased," Captain Park explained. "It was done to protect your mental health. The mission report is in this file, but most of it is blacked out. Even I don't know all the details." She opened the file. Jake could see pages and pages of documents, but most of the words were covered with black ink. Only a few sentences were clear. "Mission, Survey of Planet Designation X7429. Crew, 4 members. Result, emergency evacuation required. Casualties, unknown. Memory modification, approved for psychological protection." Jake stared at the papers. He felt like someone had punched him in the stomach. Part of his life was missing and he had never known it. "Why are you telling me this now?" Jake asked. "Because the Zephyrians are not just asking for a meeting," Captain Park said. "They want you to come to a peace summit. Something big is happening in their government. There are groups that want to end the peace with Earth. Kiravel is leading the people who want to stay friends with humans." Captain Park picked up another paper from the file. This one was not blacked out as much. "From what I can read, you saved someone during that mission 12 years ago. A Zephyrian. The report says you risked your life to help them. But then something went wrong, and the rescue team thought everyone was dead." Jake tried hard to remember anything about a mission like that. He closed his eyes and searched his mind. Sometimes he had dreams about running through a forest and hearing someone call for help. but he had always thought those were just nightmares. "What if I go to this summit and still can't remember?" Jake asked. "Then you tell them the truth," Captain Park said. "But Jake, if this Kiravel remembers you, then maybe being near her will help you remember too. The doctor said the memory blocks sometimes weaken over time." Jake looked at the file again. His hands were shaking a little. "What if I remember something terrible? What if there's a reason they made me forget?" Captain Park put her hand on his shoulder. "That's your choice to make, Jake. But I can tell you this, the Zephyrians are in trouble. If their government falls apart, we might have a war. And for some reason, they think you can help prevent that." Jake stood up slowly. His mind was full of questions, but he knew what he had to do. "When do we leave for the summit?" "Tomorrow morning," Captain Park said. "You'll take a fast ship to the neutral space station where the meeting will happen. Jake, I want you to know that whatever happened before, you're a good officer and a good person. Don't let fear stop you from doing what's right." Jake nodded and walked toward the door. As he reached for the handle, Captain Park called his name. "Jake, one more thing, the message from Kiravel. It wasn't just official business. At the end, she wrote something personal." "What did she say?" Captain Park looked at the tablet again. She said, "Tell Jake that the flowers he gave me still grow in my garden. I never forgot his kindness." "Does that mean anything to you?" Jake felt something strange in his chest, like a memory trying to break free. For just a moment, he could almost see a field of small white flowers and hear someone laughing, but then the feeling was gone. "No," he said quietly, "but maybe it will." Jake left the captain's office with more questions than answers. Tomorrow, he would meet someone who claimed to know him better than he knew himself. He spent the rest of the day trying to remember a past that had been stolen from him, wondering what kind of person he used to be. Jake could not sleep that night. He lay in his small bed on the ship staring at the ceiling. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw bits and pieces of strange dreams. There was always someone calling for help, but he could never see who it was. The next morning, Jake packed his few belongings into a travel bag. Captain Park gave him a small ship called the Swift Arrow. It was fast and could make the trip to the neutral space station in 2 days. As Jake flew through space, he tried to remember more about his past. The ship's computer had files about Zephyrian culture. Jake read about their people and their world. Zephyrians lived much longer than humans. They were very smart and loved art and music. But they also had strict rules about who was important in their society. Jake learned that Zephyrians believed only perfect, strong people should have power. Anyone who was sick or hurt was often pushed aside. This seemed cruel to Jake. On Earth, people tried to help those who needed it most. On the second day of his trip, something strange happened. Jake was eating lunch when he heard a sound that made him stop. The ship's computer was playing Zephyrian music. The melody was soft and sad, but somehow familiar. Suddenly, Jake's head filled with a memory. He was sitting by a fire in a dark forest. Someone was humming the same tune. He could not see the person clearly, but he knew they were hurt and scared. "I know this song," Jake said to himself. He asked the computer to play it again. This time, more memories came back. Jake remembered being very tired and hungry. His uniform was torn and his left arm was hurt. But he was not alone. Someone else was with him. Someone who needed his help even more than he needed theirs. Jake closed his eyes and tried to see more. Slowly, the memory became clearer. He was on a planet covered with thick trees. The air was hot and wet. Something had gone wrong with his mission. His team was scattered and he was lost. Then he heard crying. Jake followed the sound and found a young Zephyrian female trapped under a fallen tree. Her legs were crushed and she could not move. She was making sounds of pain and fear. Jake remembered how scared he had been. He did not speak her language well, and he did not know how to help her. But he could not just leave her there to die. The memory showed him lifting the heavy tree branch off her legs. The Zephyrian female cried out as he moved her to safety. Her legs were badly hurt, probably broken. Jake used pieces of his torn uniform to wrap her wounds. For the next few days, they had stayed together in a small cave. Jake shared his emergency, food and water with her. He tried to make her comfortable and keep her warm at night. Even though they could not talk much, they found ways to communicate. Jake remembered that the Zephyrian female was very young, maybe only 16 or 17, in human years. She seemed surprised that he was helping her. At first she tried to push him away as if she was ashamed of being hurt, but Jake did not give up. He showed her that he did not care about her injuries. He treated her like she was important and valuable. When she was in pain, he sat with her and held her hand. When she was hungry, he gave her the last of his food. Jake remembered finding a patch of small white flowers near their cave. The Zephyrian female seemed to love them. Her blue skin would almost glow when she looked at the flowers. Jake picked some and gave them to her. She smiled for the first time since he had found her. The memory of her smile made Jake's heart feel warm. Even though she was hurt and they were both in danger, she had been grateful for his kindness. She had taught him some words in her language, and he had taught her some English words. Jake shook his head as the memory faded. He was back in his ship, flying through space. But now he knew the truth. He had met Kiravel before. He had saved her life, and she had saved his in return. Her friendship had kept him from giving up hope during those dark days in the forest. But what had happened next? Why had his memory been erased? Jake tried to remember more, but it was like hitting a wall in his mind. The memories stopped at the moment when they heard the sound of rescue ships in the sky. Jake spent the rest of his trip trying to piece together the missing parts. He knew that something bad had happened when the rescue team arrived. The mission report said there had been casualties. Maybe Kiravel had been hurt again, or maybe she had died. That would explain why the doctors thought it was too painful for him to remember. But if Kiravel had died, how was she asking to meet him now? Jake felt confused and worried. What if this was all a trick? What if someone was pretending to be her? As the swift arrow approached the neutral space station, Jake could see how big it was. The station looked like a giant wheel spinning slowly in space. Ships from many different worlds were docked around it. Jake could see human ships, Zephyrian vessels, and others he did not recognize. The station's traffic control gave Jake permission to land. As his ship settled into the docking bay, Jake felt nervous and excited at the same time. In a few minutes, he would meet someone who claimed to know him better than he knew himself. Jake walked through the station's hallways. The place was full of different kinds of beings. He saw humans in navy uniforms, tall blue Zephyrians in flowing robes, and other aliens he had never seen before. Everyone seemed to be in a hurry. A young human woman in a diplomatic uniform met Jake at the security checkpoint. "Lieutenant Morrison, I'm Amy Chen from the Earth Embassy. I'm here to take you to the meeting room." Jake followed Amy through more hallways. The station was much bigger than it looked from outside. They passed shops, restaurants, and offices. Everything was clean and modern. "Is she really here?" Jake asked Amy. "Kiravel, I mean." Amy nodded. "She arrived 2 days ago. She's been asking about you every few hours." "Lieutenant, I have to warn you. She's not just any Zephyrian, she's become very important in their government. Some people call her the most powerful disabled person in the galaxy." "Disabled?" Jake asked. "She uses a mobility device to get around," Amy explained. "Her legs were badly injured years ago and never healed properly. But she's turned that experience into political power. She fights for the rights of disabled people across many worlds." They stopped in front of a large door marked Conference Room 7. Amy put her hand on Jake's shoulder. "Lieutenant, whatever happened between you two in the past, it changed her life. She spent years studying human culture and philosophy. She says humans taught her that being different doesn't mean being weak." Jake took a deep breath. Is she the same person I remember?" Amy smiled. "Why don't you go in and find out?" The door slid open with a soft sound. Jake stepped inside and saw a large room with a long table. Sitting at the far end was a tall, blue-skinned Zephyrian female. She was older than in his memories, but he knew immediately that it was her. Kiravel looked up and smiled the same gentle smile he remembered from their time in the forest. "Hello, Jake," she said in perfect English. "I told you the flowers still grow in my garden. Did you think I was lying?" Jake stood in the doorway, unable to move. The woman sitting at the table was definitely Kiravel, but she looked so different from his memories. She was older now, maybe in her 30s. Her blue skin had a healthy glow, and her long hair was tied back in an elegant style. She wore formal robes that showed she was important in Zephyrian society, but the biggest difference was her confidence. In his memories, she had been scared and hurt. Now she sat straight and proud, even though Jake could see the mobility device attached to her chair. It was a sleek machine that seemed to help her move around. "Please sit down," Kiravel said, gesturing to a chair across from her. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Jake slowly walked to the chair and sat down. He stared at her, trying to match this powerful woman with the frightened girl he remembered. "You're really alive," he said quietly. "They told me. I thought you had died." Kiravel's expression became sad. "I almost did die, Jake. After you were taken away, things got very bad for me. But I survived because of what you taught me." "What? I taught you?" Jake felt confused. "I don't understand. I was just trying to help." "That's exactly what you taught me," Kiravel said. "You showed me that helping others is the most important thing a person can do. In my culture, when someone becomes disabled like me, their family usually abandons them. They think we bring shame to the family name." Jake felt angry hearing this. "That's terrible. No one should be treated that way." "I used to think I deserved it," Kiravel continued. "When you found me under that tree, I tried to make you leave me behind. I thought I was worthless because my legs were broken." She moved her chair closer to the table. Jake could see that her legs were thin and did not move normally. She needed the machine to help her get around. "But you wouldn't leave me," she said. "You shared your food with me even when you were hungry. You kept me warm when I was cold. You gave me flowers to make me smile. You treated me like I was important, even though I couldn't walk." Jake remembered more details now. "You were so young. I couldn't just leave a kid alone in the forest." "To you, it was simple kindness," Kiravel said. "But to me, it was proof that I had value as a person. When the rescue ships came, I watched them take you away. I thought I would never see you again." Jake leaned forward. "What happened after that? Why can't I remember?" Kiravel's face became dark. "Enemy soldiers attacked right after your rescue ship left. They found me still hiding in the cave. They thought I was dead, so they just left me there. I was alone for 3 more days before my people found me." "That's horrible," Jake said. "You must have been so scared." "I was," Kiravel admitted. "But I remembered what you told me. You said that every person has something special to offer the world. You said that being different doesn't make someone weak." She touched a small device on her wrist, and a hologram appeared above the table. It showed a beautiful garden full of white flowers like the ones Jake had given her years ago. "After I healed, I started this garden," Kiravel said. "Every flower represents someone who has been rejected by society because they are different. The garden has grown very large over the years." Jake looked at the hologram in amazement. The garden was huge, with thousands of white flowers growing in perfect rows. "This is beautiful," Jake said. "But I still don't understand why you wanted to see me." Kiravel made the hologram disappear. "Jake, do you know what happened to me after I returned home?" Jake shook his head. "My family did exactly what I expected," Kiravel said. "They were ashamed of my disability. They wanted to hide me away so no one would see me. But I had learned something from you. I had learned to stand up for myself." She smiled, but there was strength in it now, not just gentleness. "I refused to hide. I started speaking publicly about how disabled people are treated in our society. I talked about a human soldier who had shown me more kindness in a few days than my own family had shown me in years." Jake felt embarrassed. "I just did what anyone would do." "No, Jake, that's where you're wrong," Kiravel said firmly. "What you did was special. Most people, even humans, would have tried to save themselves first. You put a stranger's life before your own comfort. She pulled out a small recording device and placed it on the table. I have been studying human culture for 12 years, Kiravel said. I wanted to understand what made you different. What I learned changed everything I thought I knew about strength and weakness. What did you learn? Jake asked. I learned that humans have something most other species don't have, Kiravel explained. You have an instinct to protect those who cannot protect themselves. You call it compassion, but it's more than that. It's a survival trait that has made your species stronger. Kiravel activated the recording device. Jake heard voices speaking in Zephyrian, but the device translated their words into English. This is a recording from our High Council meeting last month, Kiravel said. Listen to what they're saying about humans. The translated voices were arguing. Some Zephyrians wanted to end their alliance with Earth. They said humans were weak because they wasted resources on people who couldn't contribute to society. But other voices defended humans, saying their compassion made them trustworthy allies. The debate has been going on for months, Kiravel said when the recording ended. Half of our government wants to break ties with Earth. They think your kindness is a weakness that makes you unreliable in war. And what do you think? Jake asked. Kiravel leaned forward, her eyes bright with passion. I think your compassion is your greatest strength. A society that takes care of its weakest members is a society that will never truly fall. That's why I asked for you specifically, Jake. I don't understand. What can I do? I'm just a lieutenant. You can be yourself, Kiravel said simply. Tomorrow, the High Council will vote on whether to continue our alliance with Earth. I have arranged for you to speak to them. Jake felt panic rising in his chest. I can't speak to alien leaders. I don't know anything about politics or diplomacy. You don't need to, Kiravel said. You just need to tell them what you told me in that forest 12 years ago. You need to show them that humans value every life, even when it's not easy or profitable. She reached across the table and took his hand. Her skin was warm and smooth. Jake, there are people in our government who want to start a war. They believe that only the strongest should survive, and they think humans are too weak to be good allies. But I know better. I know that human kindness isn't weakness. It's the thing that makes you unbeatable. Jake looked down at their joined hands. What if I say the wrong thing? What if I make things worse? You won't, Kiravel said with confidence. Do you know how I became so powerful in our government? It wasn't because I'm smart or because I have important friends. It's because people remember the story of a human soldier who risked his life to save a disabled alien girl. She squeezed his hand gently. That story has been told across our entire star system, Jake. It has changed how thousands of Zephyrians think about disability and kindness. Parents tell it to their children to teach them about compassion. It has become a symbol of what friendship between our species could be. Jake felt overwhelmed. I had no idea. Tomorrow you'll have the chance to remind our leaders why that story matters, Kiravel said. You'll have the chance to save not just our alliance, but the idea that different kinds of people can work together to make the galaxy a better place. Released his hand and moved her chair back. For now, let me show you something, Kiravel said. I want you to see what your kindness has built. She pressed another button on her device, and the room's walls became transparent. Outside, Jake could see the space station's main plaza. Hundreds of beings from dozens of different species were walking around, talking, working together. This station exists because of trust between species, Kiravel said. But trust like this is fragile. It can be destroyed by fear and prejudice. Tomorrow we find out if it's strong enough to survive. Jake watched the peaceful scene outside and felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. Somehow his simple act of kindness, years ago, had grown into something much bigger than he had ever imagined. Jake spent the evening with Kiravel, learning about the crisis facing both their peoples. They sat in her private quarters on the station, sharing a meal and talking like old friends. But Jake could see the worry in Kiravel's eyes. Tell me about this Purity Coalition, Jake said as they ate. The food was a mix of human and Zephyrian dishes that tasted better than he expected. Kiravel put down her fork and sighed. They started as a small political group 5 years ago. Their leader is a Zephyrian named Commander Thakmor. He believes that weakness in any form is a disease that spreads through society. She showed Jake a holographic image of a tall, muscular Zephyrian male with scars covering his arms and face. Thakmor was a war hero before he became a politician, Kiravel explained. He led our armies to victory against the Krex Empire 20 years ago. Many Zephyrians see him as the perfect example of strength and honor. He doesn't look very friendly, Jake said, studying the image. He's not, Kiravel replied. Thakmor teaches that any being who cannot fight and work at full capacity should be eliminated. This includes the sick, the old, the disabled, and anyone who shows mercy to such people. Jake felt cold hearing this. That's horrible. How can anyone believe such things? Fear, Kiravel said simply. When people are scared, they often look for someone to blame. Thakmor tells them that all their problems come from wasting resources on useless individuals. She changed the hologram to show a map of the galaxy. Red areas mark territories controlled by the Purity Coalition. Over the past 2 years, Thakmor has gained control of 12 star systems, Kiravel said. In each one, he has created what he calls purification camps. Anyone deemed unfit for society is sent there. What happens in these camps? Jake asked, though he was afraid to know the answer. Kiravel's voice became very quiet. No one who goes to a purification camp ever comes back. Jake stared at the map in horror. Millions of beings lived in those red areas. Why hasn't anyone stopped him? Many have tried, Kiravel said, but Thakmor is very smart. He doesn't attack anyone directly. Instead, he convinces local governments to join him willingly. He promises them strength, prosperity, and victory over their enemies. She pointed to areas on the map that were orange instead of red. These systems are considering joining the coalition, Kiravel explained. If they do, Thakmor will control more than half of our galaxy. At that point, he'll be strong enough to attack anyone who opposes him, including Earth, Jake said. Especially Earth, Kiravel confirmed. Thakmor sees human compassion as the most dangerous threat to his philosophy. He says that humans are a virus that makes other species weak and soft. Jake looked at the map again. Earth was a tiny blue dot surrounded by the growing red and orange areas. But why do you need me to speak to your High Council? Jake asked. Can't you convince them yourself? Kiravel smiled sadly. I have been trying for months, Jake, but I'm just one voice and I'm disabled. Many council members see me as proof that our society has become too soft. She moved her chair to the window and looked out at the stars. However, you represent something they cannot ignore, Kiravel continued. You are a human military officer who risked his life to save someone society had written off as worthless. Your actions prove that compassion and strength can exist together. What exactly do you want me to say to them? Jake asked. The truth, Kiravel said. Tell them why you helped me. Help them understand that protecting the vulnerable isn't weakness. It's what makes a civilization truly strong. The next morning, Jake put on his best uniform and prepared for the most important speech of his life. Kiravel led him through the station's government sector to the council chambers. The chambers were huge, with seats arranged in a circle around a central speaking area. Jake counted over 200 Zephyrian council members taking their places. Most of them looked serious and important. Some stared at Jake with obvious curiosity, while others seemed hostile. Remember, Kiravel whispered as they approached the center. Speak from your heart. Don't try to sound like a politician. The council leader, an elderly Zephyrian female named High Counselor Velsama, called for order. Her voice echoed throughout the chamber. We are here to hear from Lieutenant Jake Morrison of Earth, she announced. Counselor Kiravel has requested that this human address us before we vote on the future of our alliance. Jake walked to the center of the chamber. 200 pairs of alien eyes focused on him. He had never felt so nervous in his life. Honored. Counselors, Jake began, his voice shaking slightly. I'm not a diplomat or a politician, I'm just a soldier. But I want to tell you about something that happened to me 12 years ago. The chamber became completely quiet. Jake took a deep breath and continued. I was lost on a planet, hurt and scared. I heard someone crying for help. I found a young Zephyrian female trapped under a tree. Her legs were crushed and she couldn't move. Some of the council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. I want to be honest with you, Jake said. My first thought was not about helping her. My first thought was about my own survival. I was injured too, and I knew that helping her would make both of us more likely to die. A few council members nodded, as if this made sense to them. But then I looked at her face. Jake continued, his voice growing stronger. She was in pain, and she was terrified. In that moment, I realized that leaving her to die would make me less human than I wanted to be. Jake looked around the chamber, making eye contact with different council members. So I helped her. I shared my food and water with her. I kept her warm at night. I gave her flowers to make her smile. And you know what happened? The chamber remained silent, waiting for his answer. She helped me too, Jake said. She kept me from giving up hope. She taught me words in your language. She shared her knowledge of the planet to help us survive. Two people who should have been enemies became friends. Jake paused and looked directly at Kiravel. That young female grew up to become one of your most respected leaders. She has spent years fighting for the rights of people your society wanted to throw away. She has made your civilization stronger by making it more compassionate. Some council members began whispering to each other. I know, some of you think human compassion is weakness, Jake continued. You think we waste resources on people who can't contribute, but I want you to consider something. Jake's voice became firm and confident. A society that abandons its weakest members is a society that has already lost its soul. When you throw away people because they're different or disabled or hurt, you throw away their potential contributions. You throw away their unique perspectives. You throw away their ability to inspire others. He gestured toward Kiravel. If your people had abandoned Kiravel after her accident, you would have lost one of your greatest advocates for justice. If I had left her in that forest, both our species would be poorer today. The chamber erupted in surprised murmurs. Several council members looked thoughtful, while others appeared angry. Jake raised his voice to be heard over the noise. The Purity Coalition wants you to believe that strength comes from eliminating weakness. But they're wrong. True strength comes from lifting up those who have fallen. True power comes from protecting those who cannot protect themselves. Chamber became quiet again. If you abandon your alliance with Earth, you're not choosing strength, Jake concluded. You're choosing to become the very thing that makes civilizations fall, a people who value power over compassion, dominance over cooperation. Jake looked around the chamber one last time. The choice is yours, honored counselors. But remember this: when the Purity Coalition comes for your people, and they will come, you'll need allies who fight not just for victory, but for the idea that every life has value. Jake returned to his seat next to Kiravel. The chamber remained silent for several long moments. Then High Counselor Velsama stood up. The council will now debate this matter, she announced. We will vote in 1 hour. As the council members began their discussions, Kiravel squeezed Jake's hand. That was perfect, she whispered. Now we wait to see if 12 years of friendship was enough to change their minds. The hour of debate felt like the longest hour of Jake's life. He and Kiravel sat in a waiting room next to the council chambers, listening to the muffled sounds of heated discussion through the walls. Sometimes voices were raised in anger, and other times the room became completely silent. Do you think it worked? Jake asked for the third time. Kiravel looked tired but hopeful. I think you gave them something to think about. Some of those council members have never heard a human speak before. They expected you to sound weak or desperate. Instead, I probably sounded terrified, Jake said with a nervous laugh. You sounded honest, Kiravel corrected. That's more powerful than any political speech. A young Zephyrian aide entered the waiting room and bowed respectfully. The council is ready to announce their decision. Jake and Kiravel returned to the chamber. The atmosphere felt different now, tenser, more serious. High Counselor Velsama stood at the center holding a formal scroll. After much discussion, the Council has reached a decision regarding our alliance with Earth, she announced. Her voice carried throughout the silent chamber. Jake held his breath. By a vote of 112 to 88, the Council chooses to maintain our alliance with the human species. Jake felt relief wash over him like a wave. Kiravel squeezed his hand so tightly it almost hurt. Around the chamber, some council members looked pleased while others appeared angry or disappointed. But High Counselor Velsama was not finished speaking. However, she continued, and Jake's heart sank. We have also received troubling news. During our deliberations, our intelligence networks report that the Purity Coalition is planning an immediate attack on this space station. The chamber erupted in shocked voices. Council members jumped to their feet, demanding answers. According to our sources, Velsama said loudly, trying to restore order. Commander Thakmor learned about today's vote. He has decided that this station has become a symbol of what he calls weakness cooperation. He intends to destroy it and everyone on board. Jake felt cold all over. When? He asked. Our ships detected his fleet 20 minutes ago, Velsama replied. They will arrive in approximately 2 hours. The chamber dissolved into chaos as council members began shouting orders and questions. Some demanded immediate evacuation, while others called for military defense. Kiravel moved her chair, close to Jake. This is what I was afraid of, she said. Thakmor doesn't just want to win political arguments. He wants to eliminate anyone who disagrees with him. How many people are on this station? Jake asked. Nearly 50,000, Kiravel replied. Humans, Zephyrians, and dozens of other species. Many of them are civilians, diplomats, traders, families. Jake looked around the panicking chamber. Can the station defend itself? Against Thakmor's entire fleet? No, Kiravel said grimly. He has 30 warships. This station only has basic, defensive systems. High Counselor Velsama managed to restore some order to the chamber. All civilian ships are ordered to begin immediate evacuation, she announced. Military vessels will attempt to hold off the coalition fleet as long as possible. Jake watched as council members began filing out of the chamber, most of them looking scared. Some were already making communication calls, probably trying to contact their families. Kiravel, Jake said suddenly. How many disabled people are on this station? What do you mean? She asked. People who can't move quickly or who need special help during an evacuation, Jake explained. How many are there? Kiravel thought for a moment. Maybe 3,000 or 4,000. Why? Jake stood up, his mind racing. Because they'll be left behind. In a panic evacuation, people always focus on saving themselves first. The ones who can't move fast enough get forgotten. Kiravel's eyes widened as she understood what he was thinking. Jake, we can't save everyone. The evacuation ships have limited space. Maybe not everyone, Jake said. But we can try to save those who need help most. Isn't that what this whole alliance is supposed to be about? Before Kiravel could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. A voice came over the communication system. All personnel report to evacuation stations immediately. This is not a drill. Jake and Kiravel left the council chambers and entered chaos. The station's corridors were packed with beings trying to reach the docking bays. People were pushing, shoving, and running. Some were crying. Others were shouting orders or questions that no one could answer. Jake saw an elderly human man with a walking cane fall down as younger people rushed past him. Without thinking, Jake pushed through the crowd and helped the man to his feet. Thank you, son, the old man said breathlessly. Stay close to me, Jake told him. I'll help you get to the ships. As they moved through the crowd, Jake saw more people who were struggling. A Zephyrian female carrying a baby was being pushed aside. A human child was crying because he had lost his parents in the chaos. An alien species Jake didn't recognize was moving very slowly because their leg was injured. Kiravel, Jake called. Over the noise, we need to organize this better. How? She asked, using her mobility device to keep up with him. Jake looked around and saw an information booth near the center of the corridor. He climbed on top of it and shouted as loudly as he could. Everyone listen to me. The crowd slowed down and looked up at him. Jake's military uniform made him stand out among the civilians. I know you're all scared, Jake called out. But if we panic, people are going to get hurt. We need to work together. Some people in the crowd nodded while others continued trying to push forward. Anyone who can walk normally, please help someone who's having trouble, Jake continued. If you see a child alone, take their hand. If you see someone fall down, help them up. We're all in this together. A human woman near the front of the crowd spoke up. Why should we slow down to help strangers? We need to save ourselves. Jake looked directly at her. Because if we only save ourselves, we stop being the kind of people worth saving. His words seemed to have an effect. Jake watched as some people in the crowd began looking around for others who needed help. A young Zephyrian male picked up the crying human child. Two human women took the arms of an elderly alien and helped him walk faster. Kiravel had been watching everything from below. She moved her chair to where Jake could see her and gave him a proud smile. For the next hour, Jake and Kiravel worked together to coordinate the evacuation. They helped organize groups of people based on how fast they could move. They made sure no one was left behind in the rush to reach safety. Jake discovered that his speech to the council had been broadcast throughout the station. Many people recognized him as the human who spoke about compassion. This gave his words extra weight when he asked people to help each other. As the last evacuation ship prepared to leave, Jake did a final check of the area near the docking bay. That's when he found them, a group of about 30 beings who had been too scared or too disabled to make it to the ships in time. We're too late, one of them said sadly. All the ships are full. Jake looked out the docking bay window and saw Coalition warships approaching in the distance. They would arrive in less than 30 minutes. No, Jake said firmly. We're not giving up. He activated his communicator and called his own ship, the Swift Arrow. Computer, prepare for emergency, launch and maximum passenger capacity. Kiravel moved her chair next to him. Jake, your ship can only hold 12 people safely. Then we'll hold them unsafely, Jake replied. Everyone, get on board now. Sit on the floor, share seats, whatever it takes. The group of 30 beings looked at him in amazement. You would risk your life for us? Asked an elderly Zephyrian female. Of course, Jake said, as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. Isn't that what friends do for each other? As they crammed everyone into his small ship, Jake felt a strange sense of peace. This was exactly where he was supposed to be, helping people who couldn't help themselves. The Swift Arrow launched just as the first coalition ships reached the station. Jake watched through the rear window as explosions lit up the space behind them. The station that had been a symbol of cooperation between species was being destroyed by those who believed only in strength. But Jake wasn't thinking about the destruction. He was looking at the 30 grateful faces around him in the cramped ship. People of different species, different abilities, different backgrounds, all working together to survive. Kiravel, he said as they flew toward safety. I think I understand now why you wanted me to speak to the council. Why? She asked. Because it was never really about politics or alliances, Jake said. It was about proving that compassion isn't weakness. It's the thing that makes us worth saving. Kiravel smiled and took his hand. It took you 12 years to remember that lesson. I'm glad you finally did. As the Swift Arrow carried its precious cargo toward the safety of human space, Jake realized that his forgotten mission was finally complete. He had saved Kiravel twice now, once in a forest and once in the halls of power. But more importantly, she had saved him by showing him who he really was. Behind them, the destroyed space station drifted in pieces through space. But ahead of them was something new, a future where different kinds of people could work together, protect each other, and prove that strength comes not from crushing the weak, but from lifting them up. The Purity Coalition had won a battle.